Hello everyone and welcome back to your weekly PlayStation podcast, Talking the PS, where we round up all the juicy PlayStation goodness for your listening or viewing pleasure right here on youtube.com/Helix Plays Games and up there in the digital clouds on your podcast preference of choice. You join myself, Chris, for episode number 38 alongside my man of many pixels, Mr. Richie. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. We've got a sea of blue news coming your way this week. We're going to be talking about Square Enix closing down studios, a brand new fantasy RPG from IO Interactive, not to be confused with James Bond, Elden Ring expansion coming, and much more in the works. But before we do dive into all that, don't forget to give the video a like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you're kept in the loop with all of the wonderful content we do here on Helix Plays Games, such as this very show, our weekly Xbox show that goes live every Monday, XPass, bringing you all the green side of the gaming news. Of course, our wonderful live show, the ClickerCast, where we round up every 8 weeks episode of The Last of Us. We break it down, we talk about all the characters in depth, live, 8 p.m. Tuesdays. 2 more weeks of that show left, Richie. It's been a fantastic run. It's a phenomenal piece of television if you've not been watching The Last of Us yet. And it's coming to an end, so tune in, catch up, do what you need to do live tonight when this show goes live, Tuesday, 8 p.m. We'll be back to talk about all that. And of course, live streams every single Thursday here on the channel and much, much more. But before we dive into all, Richie, we need to do a little bit of housekeeping for this week's show. This is episode 38. Rob's not here this week. Address that before we get way into it and realise that we've not acknowledged that Rob's not here. He's busy with work. He's got loads of business things going on, so he's a busy bee out there. But he will be back next week for one specific reason, and that's because I won't be here next week, Richie, because I've got a big momentous life event happening. Whereas this coming Friday, me and my wife are going in for our induction, so we're going to have our first child. And am I bricking it? Not too sure. I feel like quite calm right at this moment in time. It's the calm before the storm, as they say. Any wild advice from me, Richie, as someone with no children?
As someone with no children, giving advice to a soon-to-be first-time dad, I suppose just enjoy it. Like, you only get to have your first child once.
That is true. That is fact. Anyone out there in the audience, shower me with your suggestions. I will be in and around. I'll still have my phone, and no doubt if I'm sat incredibly tired somewhere on a couch or on a bed, or just probably asleep, stood upright by the kettle, whichever situation I find myself in, I will still be there in the Discord. I'm still going to be around on Twitter and stuff, and nothing's changing with the channel. We've got the plan to essentially keep scheduled programs as they are. I know you and Rob are going to have a little chat about whether we need to move the live stream days around maybe somewhat to factor in with other people's schedules, but we'll sort that out.
Figure it out.
And because, of course, we don't want the content to stop flowing for you wonderful folks, the fantastic people, our audience, of course, who support us through thick and thin. But we just wanted to give you a bit of a heads up that some things are more important than talking about video games on the internet. And, rightly so, I'm going to take a little bit of time to be with my family. My family. It seems weird when you say my family, and I'm not just referring to like siblings and parents and stuff. It's actually our
just starting
family.
a new family.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be an exciting time, a tired time, but I'm looking forward to it. So yes, I might be a little bit quieter in the coming weeks, but I'd love you all to get behind the rest of the team here at Helix Plays Games and give it your all. So comments, let us know any pro tips. I am willing to help. I know a lot of people just say don't listen to advice, so I'll just wing it and see how it goes.
Don't push the soft bit.
But I'm hoping for lots of quiet sleep so I can just chip away at some games, Richie, because that's what I want to do. And there is a voice in my head saying, like, you are not going to be able to play these games as committed as you usually want to. But you know what? It feels like that anyway. I can barely get time for Hogwarts Legacy and stuff, in amongst other things. But let's get into the thick of the show. What have you been playing this past week, Richie?
Mainly just Hogwarts Legacy, to be honest.
How many hours are we at?
I'm about 40, 45, around about there. Nice. I have bought Octopath, and I did boot it up. I was very tempted. I was like, no, turn off your Switch, Richie, because if you turn off your Switch, you won't finish Hogwarts. It's like, yeah. So it's installed, waiting to go, but I'm going to commit to finishing Hogwarts Legacy before I move on to anything else. Any major way.
Does it feel like you're reaching the end, naturally, of Hogwarts Legacy? I know the story's not too long from what I've heard, but
I'm getting there. I mean, it is one of them games where I think the main story is fairly short, but there's like the side quests where, like, around certain characters, like the development of them sort of relationships going on, and then there's just the exploration of the world. It's like, I've said I've got pretty much all but one spell unlocked now. I've pretty much there's when I'm looking at like Hogsmeade, I've pretty much cleaned up in terms of all the collectibles there. No, it's not one I've been trying to collect them so much. It's just like every time I'll go, it's like, oh, I've got the new version of Aloha Mora. I'll just have a quick wander around, unlock a few more doors, stuff like that.
Is that what that one does?
Yeah.
Right. I haven't got to the point where I can unlock doors yet, and it bugs me because every
time. It's
in
the first film, Chris. It's in the first film.
I know. Yeah, but when I'm walking around in the game, I keep doing the Revelio and spamming Revelio all over the place. When I'm playing it and the wife's in the same room, she's usually like that noise because does he not have to say it every single time?
Yeah.
But yeah, every time I go to a locked door, it's like, damn it, I still can't unlock it. I've not got to that point yet. I've been chipping away quite a little bit. I am really enjoying it, and I'm enjoying it at like a leisurely pace. And I'm chipping away at the main campaign, doing a couple of side missions kind of when it wants you to be. But overall, I think, it's a terrific game. I'm still thoroughly enjoying it. The campaign story's good. The side quests are quite fun. Some of the acting, cheesy, British, it's passable. Some of the mechanics are a little bit clunkier. I'm still really annoyed Quidditch isn't in the game, really. I know they address it several times of, like, it's just been banned because of something that happened last term. Kind of feels like it's been saved for the sequel, maybe.
I think it was one of them that probably had an idea to have it in, but with the things like the broom mechanics, probably couldn't figure out a way to make it play well, because the broom mechanics, I don't know if you've got the broom yet.
Yeah, I have, the basic.
It's great for travelling, but can you imagine trying to play in like a fast, intense-paced sport with that? The controls would be really difficult, so they probably just couldn't quite have the time to kind of figure that out.
Well, what they need to do is go to that guy's shop in Hogsmeade and he'll upgrade the brooms for them so they can do more, because I've done one or two of those side missions. I've started to get to a point where I'm doing a lot more fighting mechanics, fighting spiders and stuff, and leveling up and learning how to use the kind of block and stuff. A lot more than I am in another game that I'm playing, Richie, which is I've dived this week into Wolong Fallen Dynasty. It's free on Game Pass. We spoke about it a lot more in depth yesterday on XPass. So go check out that podcast where I'm no doubt going to vent my frustrations and stuff. But I said last week, this is a game probably of all the Dark Souls, Bloodborne-esque games for me to get into. Wolong is probably the one because of my history with the Dynasty Warriors series and the Romance of the Three Kingdoms story, the heroes, the villains. I kind of know them. It's basically my entry point into Chinese history. It is that. I was speaking to our friend we know who lives over in China, and he was shocked when I was talking to him about the history of everything, even though a lot of it's kind of spreading the truth a little bit thin. All the names and stuff, it was like as though I was talking to him, and he's lived there for like several years now, and I knew more about it than he did, like Guan Yu's their god of war and everything like that, and he's going, I have no idea who that is. Not that you have to culturally link yourself to where you live, but as fake as it may be, I enjoyed what I played of it to a certain point, and my first look is up on the channel right now. Anyone who's watched my Monster Boy playthrough series up on the channel will know I don't cope well with getting frustrated, and I get quite frustrated at this one quite a few times. I actually did record a second look at the game yesterday before I went out, and I haven't published it, I haven't edited it yet, because I thought I was going to take on everyone's advice from our wonderful Discord community, Twitter, everyone who's shared things and said, look, Chris, if you just do this, this, and this. So I thought, I'll go do those hints and tips and go back to it. Did it help? No, not at all. I just spent another hour getting pissed off and more frustrated at this Zhang Liang boss fight. And I do think I can beat him, but go check out the first look. Any more advice, send my way.
This is the sort of stuff that just turns me off, like Soulsborne style games. It's like, I'm like you, I get very frustrated with stuff. It's like sometimes, when it feels like it's unfair. Like, it's like, this is just more difficult than it needs to be. Then I just don't enjoy being stressed when I'm playing games. I enjoy a challenge, but I don't like a brutal challenge. I don't want to spend several hours grinding through the same fight till I've learned every little intricacy of that one particular fight. I'd rather get good at using the base mechanics and apply it to whatever situation.
Yeah, it's a weird one because, as I said, I've never played these before, but I do have the Platinum Trophy in Kena Bridge of Spirits, which means you need to finish that game on the hardest difficulty, and that is the nearest I've gotten to a Soulsborne type game. And I didn't fudge the trophy. I waited for the physical version, so I didn't get the dodgy patch update where you could play it on easy and then switch the difficulty up at the last cutscene. Didn't do it. I completed it the real old-fashioned way. And that game was tough, but I did enjoy it. And that's the one thing with Warlang I will say, is I think because of the characters and the story, I want to get past this first boss to enjoy it open up a little bit, because apparently this first boss is just an absolute bastard, and if you can get past that, the subsequent bosses and stuff are easier, and you can do more grinding and more gear gathering and loot finding to strengthen yourself up. But go watch the first look. I want to beat him, Richie. I want to kick his ass so damn much, but I'm beholden to this human form that restricts me to skill and ability and age, that I just can't parry for shit. I can't see those time windows.
I've always been bad at parries in games.
And I know a lot of people on our Discord are the same. They can't get past them. So maybe as a community, we can do it together. We'll all chip away. We'll all share in each other's love and frustration of video games. And maybe when I'm sleep deprived and I've got a young baby to look after, maybe that's the key ingredient, Richie, that I need to hit this game perfection. I'll just sit here, drooling out the side of my mouth at 4 a.m. And then all of a sudden I'll become a parry master. You know, when you're I'm going to leave my own body, my soul is going to leave, and it's going to play the game for me while I die and sleep in the corner. Who knows? But yeah, Warlong Fallen Dynasty. Check out yesterday's XPass podcast where we go a lot more in depth, because of course it's free on Game Pass right now. So I'm playing it over there anyway. But that's my world right now. Bit of Hogwarts Legacy, bit of that. And yeah, lots to play. Let us know in the comments below what you're playing at the moment. There's an absolute long list of games out there. I know a couple of people are going back. Anyone out there checked out Octopath? Do let us know, because Richie's no doubt going to dive into that imminently. When I'm in the hospital, I'm going to take my Switch, so I'm probably going to go back to Pokemon, Richie. I know I've been putting it off. It's had a patch update, I think, a major update recently. So yeah, fingers crossed they fixed it. And while my wife's doing her part, I can chip away collecting. Got to catch them all. So I'll do what I can.
I need to go back to Pokemon and probably power through to complete the game and like the stories in it, and then just go, okay, I'm done with it.
You're done with it, indeed. Right then, before we get into the show, shout out to all of our Helix heroes, the wonderful folks who do support the channel an extra bit more. You can do so as well and get this very show a few days early, along with special stickers and badges next to your name. But more importantly, you support the channel an extra bit further. From as little as 99 pence, you can show us your love. There are other tiers, of course, but we appreciate any support of the way. And you guys sponsor the news every single week. Over 50 of you do, and we thank you very much every single week. We don't do enough to thank you, is what I usually think. We know I usually bring up the list in the edit, and you can see your name and shiny lights and stuff. And we sometimes try and tweet out and say special thank you, but it's kind of weird because there's nothing really more we can do. We can't buy them a pint, Richie, because we don't know who they are or where they live. Yeah. What can we do other than say thank you? But we do appreciate you all, so thank you very much. And you sponsor the news.
Even you.
Even all you... what was I going to say? I was going to insult them all there, but that's probably not a good thing to start with your audience. All the freeloaders out there who watch this on YouTube and podcast services for free. You know who you are. You enjoy our subtle tones and voices every week. Richie, in Rob's absence, could you introduce us to the
properly prepared PlayStation perusing point, aka the news.
You had me pausing. For a moment. If you donate to the channel via the Helix Hero membership, maybe we'll say the news at an adequate, timely fashion next time. And Rob's going to have to say it next week, and he's also going to do the XPass one, right?
Yes, he will have to.
He's done that before, surely, maybe, possibly.
I think you've missed an episode of XPass.
Yeah, possibly. He'll have to figure it out. We'll figure it out. As we do with everything here, we will figure it out, folks. And one thing that does need figuring out over at Square Enix is story number 1 for Forspoken development team, Luminos Studios. Luminoso. What's the spell? Lumos, yes. I'm getting Harry Potter mixed up.
I find I never need to use it, actually.
No, it's never really that dark. I think
there's a few situations where things are really dark for story reasons, but yeah.
Yeah, but speaking of magic, Forspoken, of course, it was PlayStation exclusive, launched in January 2. It's a weird one in hindsight. Now we're kind of a month or so detached from the launch of Forspoken. It didn't do too bad on reviews. I just think it didn't hit home as much as I think everyone, both Square, PlayStation, and the potential fan base were hoping for, and it seems to have just gone now. It muted I guess, non-success. And story number one is the fact that Square Enix are folding Luminous Productions into the wider team of Square Enix. So we've seen Square Enix in recent year or so truncate their business, and we know they sold off Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal. They got rid of the Tomb Raider franchise to the Embracer Group, which seemed like a crazy move, and we know they've said they're going to commit more to the Japanese studios and the style of game. And then Forspoken has now came out, and their team is now going to be folded into it. So from the 1st of May, the Japanese outfit's just going to basically merge all the teams. So they've not mentioned anything regarding redundancies or layoffs. It just means now this development cycle is obviously on its way out and winding down, and Forspoken will no doubt receive a couple more patches and support. With it being predominantly single player, that's I guess the good thing with these type of games. You can move on from them quite quickly once they are done and wrapped.
Especially when it's got a meta score of 64 at the moment on the PS5 and a user score of 3.4. This is not a game they want to dwell on, really. It's just critics are kind of going, it's fine.
Yeah, which in
the audience is going, it's boring.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the main thing in the criticisms is it's just a bit boring.
Yeah, and this seemingly spells the end also for the Luminous engine, which is the in-game engine that runs the game. I know the game was praised for some of its art looking fantastic, like the magical abilities and such, rendered really, really well. But then at other times it was criticised for its open world ability, and it wasn't able to showcase the power of the PS5 all that well. So it looks like the engine is going alongside the team potentially.
That's a bit of a stretch, to be honest. It's like they're not getting rid of the studio so much as like folding in and its assets into like Square Enix, like in general. So there won't be a Luminous Studios, but the engine. If the engine works and it's good and they can build from it. It would be a weird thing to just outright scrap.
I suspect it may be everyone moving away to Unreal 5. We CD Projekt Red are ditching their own engine because again, there's always costs involved for the upkeep of your own one when you could just lease Unreal. I think a lot of Square Enix stuff. I think they've already announced a couple of future projects. I think is the next Final Fantasy the first one in Unreal?
I'm
possibly
not.
Not. I feel like I've read a couple of things about companies, like big companies, leaning into it. For sure, and obviously we know PlayStation have shares in Epic, who own Unreal, so it's got that kind of loop financial cycle. But do we think this is just the nail in the coffin that Forspoken is? There is no sequel to this game. It'll just be a done and we tried, but unfortunately.
I think when you read a lot of the reviews and it's kind of like the world seems a bit bland, the characters all seem a bit bland, it's like, well, what's there to really make a sequel? Because if it was a case of, okay, the gameplay is a bit janky, but it tells a great story and the characters are really likable, it's like, okay, maybe you make a sequel on focus on them things, sort out the problems. It seems to be the other way around. It plays fine as a game.
Yeah.
But the world is just like it's just not interesting.
Yeah, they seem
so then it's like there's nothing there to build on really.
And of course, you were quite hyped for this game prior to the demo. I was intrigued by it, and then lost both of us.
I like action RPGs, like the traversal and stuff. It seemed really cool. Like the more like trailers and stuff I saw, but when I got hands on, it's like something feels off. Yeah. So the game is apparently still coming out with a large update, which is in the works to improve technical performance and such. And there is a DLC that's promised called In Tanta We Trust, which is set for summer launch. I'm guessing they'll probably see that out. We'll get a patch update, and that'll be the last big push before possibly exclusivity ends. Because as far as we know, this will eventually come to Xbox in maybe a year's time or 6 months' time. So maybe it'll get a second boon then, but I think this one's destined for PS Plus and or Game Pass, right? Yeah, I think I can definitely see it as a PS Plus game down the line, and where that might help it find like an audience that can appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah,
I think because part of it is like the critical reviews. You have to remember this was kind of one of the biggest hype games coming into this year, and then just when you get hyped up like that, if you don't stick the landing.
Mm-hmm.
It's always going to review. Probably, I think sometimes like reviews can overcorrect. It's probably a 7 out of 10 rather than a 6 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think sometimes these things do overcorrect. Where if if you're a developer, if you're like a critic, really excited to get your hands on it, and you play it and go, really didn't enjoy that. Especially when you think of a lot like critics will sit there and like play 40 hours of it in a week in order to get a review up in time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're spending 40 hours a week grinding through what is a relatively boring game, by the end of that week, you're going to have a pretty negative opinion on this.
Yeah, there was a lot of early reviewers who said they kind of just mainlined the story as well, so the side content wasn't even quality enough for them to kind of explore the rest of the wider world, and they just beelined the main story and went, it was fine. So,
but if the main story is getting people like that, well,
yeah, exactly.
The side content, it doesn't matter how good the side content is for me, is because it's side content.
Exactly.
Like, you have to, if you haven't nailed your main story, you could have the best side content in the world, and I'm still not interested.
Well, you might not even get to it. So yeah, Forspoken, seemingly on rocky waters, but yeah, obviously it's good to hear that the studio, although it's been folded into the wider Square Enix team, that seemingly there's going to be no job losses and everything. Obviously, they need developers; they're in high demand right now. So we'll maybe see what comes out of them. Do you think this is part of, again, Square Enix, Richie? I know we've touched on it a few times on the show, but is Square Enix just still primed for purchase right now? Like, this is another studio, all their overheads kind of get brought into the wider bill footing for the whole company rather than be a little side project. And if you're looking to buy Square Enix, it's just one less asset to worry about because it's all under one umbrella now, like a tighter ship.
Maybe. It also just might just be like the tech industry as a whole is going through consolidation. Like, and gaming is definitely affected. It could just be like this period of consolidation where, okay, let's strip out all the stuff that we don't need, all the stuff that is expensive to keep up and running. That is like, as they've been over the years diversifying, let's almost go back to what we're strong at. And like they've looked at Luminous Studios and go, okay, Forspoken didn't work. We're not going to probably make another one. What do we do with this?
Yeah,
like let's just reincorporate it back into Square. Move the people to like other teams and stuff. Because bear in mind, they've got 2 Final Fantasy games coming out this year.
They do.
So like they're probably going to need all hands on deck going this year in just one franchise, and that's just dropped Octopath. Octopath is from Square Enix.
Yeah, absolutely true.
So it's like they've got a lot of things in irons in the fire. So I think it's just that. Although I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't for things like Octopath being such a Switch game. I could see them Sony buying them, but I think there's something to be said. I think Nintendo would have issues with that.
Well, we know what mergers and acquisitions are like right now. I am very curious to know, once all the dust has settled on the Activision Blizzard merger, like if that had any knock-on repercussions of other potential purchases, because you've got to imagine if Sony were maybe circling around for Square Enix, they can't make a move right now. No, not at all. It's too risky, and it would just kind of undermine everything they've done.
As soon as like Sony made a play for Square Enix, Microsoft just go, regulators, everyone. Sony have a problem with us by Activision. This is the same. This is Japanese Activision.
So then, seemingly without getting too far into the weeds on that one, it looks like, we'll talk about an XPass, no doubt. It looks like that merger is being signed off by certain regulators across Europe and such. If that does go through, then does that approval not greenlight Sony going, hell, you know what? If they've bought them, we can buy these, because you can't say yes to one and not the other, especially when it's probably not going to be for as much money.
You know what? You might be right. It might just be like the whole like purchase everyone, because last year everyone was buying everyone. Then Activision Blizzard King deal came up, and then everyone stopped buying everyone. Do you think maybe once that deal, when that's resolved one way or the other, could the bidding wars on things like the Ubisofts and the Square Enix, these kind of like Embracer, like these
regulators
they're back on the table, when no one's willing to make it Activision Blizzard King is kind of a dam that's stopping like Sony and Microsoft especially buying more stuff, because it would impact.
Absolutely. It's like a stacked chessboard when the next move is critical, but no one's making that move. And we've been staring at this chessboard now for months on end, and no one's moved that next piece to kind of push the game on a little bit.
It is moving. There's been practically week on week movement, and it is getting increasingly looking like it is going to go through.
Yeah.
It seems to be the UK is kind of like the biggest hurdle at the moment.
We are a stickler for the rules over here. That is a known fact about us Brits. But yes, we'll no doubt hear more in the future. Again, the end of the financial year is usually a big trigger for a lot of companies to kind of make moves or do business or look at their revenue assets and such and think like, what are we doing for the year ahead to help shareholders, investors, and all that jazz. So not too long to wait for that dam to break, hopefully. Moving on though to story number 2 of the week. Hitman developer IO and soon to be James Bond developer working on Project 007, which I'm hoping to hear some more about this year. I do feel like we're due a teaser trailer. Looking a bit closer at their website for recruitment, they've posted an update on their page, and reading straight from the website, a new adventure begins at IO Interactive. Join the party and help us realise our vision for a bold new online fantasy RPG. Reading on more, it has now been a decade since we first imagined creating a new world of assassination for our Hitman games. 7 years ago, we launched that world in its infancy and nurtured it to grow to comprise of 3 full games, exciting new game modes, many additional locations, and extra targets. Now we're all sharing with you that we're embarking on a new adventure, one that expands our creativity and capabilities and some our sense of identity. We're building a new world, a new IP, an online fantasy RPG, a world and a game built from the core to entertain players and expand for many years to come. It feels familiar, yet at the same time, IO is going on a journey unlike any we've been on before. It goes on to kind of explore what they're going to be doing, lizards, wizards, and kings and queens and whatnot. Richie, turn it over to you. This is big for IO. They have very much been the Hitman studio for a long, long time, and the James Bond Project 007 did seem like the perfect fit to take that Hitman kind of espionage action to the next level with a famed IP that is James Bond. But evidently they've grown enough since ironically enough, back to story number 1, since they broke away from Square Enix. Remember, this studio was given the right to leave with the Hitman IP, and they've done wonders with it for themselves independently. They're now branching out into an online fantasy RPG. Where does this sit with you? Does it intrigue you?
There's one word in that I just don't like, and it's the online bit. Like, that makes me immediately think of MMO, and I think you're probably setting yourself up for failure.
Dun, dun, dun.
A fantasy RPG is that, 100% give me that every single day of the week. As soon as you're making it an online experience, then you have to have enough people and you have enough stuff to keep people invested for an extended period of time and to build that community. Like, how many things like battle royales do we see just fail? How much like are these games as service stuff just kind of fall on the face out the doors? It's like, and it feels like a departure massively from what we know IO to be to worked on in the past. Mm-hmm. So it feels like you're not only making a departure in terms of genre, the fact that it's going to be an RPG as well as a fantasy game. There's 2 departures, and now it's going to be an online thing. It seems like is this what we want from IO? Like, I hope I'm wrong, but I think the proof is going to be in what we see. On the flip side of that is the fact that this isn't in IO Interactive's wheelhouse does get me intrigued to see like they might do something different and unique and interesting, because Hitman is quite almost like a genre into its own.
It is, and they've shepherded it since 2000 with like multiple Hitman games, Contracts, Blood Money. The only real time they've deviated is for the Kane and Lynch series back on the PS3 360 era. Which again were well received. I remember playing Kane and Lynch, the first one I think it was, back on my PS3. I think my brother had it, and I enjoyed it for what it was. But it very much felt so similar to Hitman, just with 2 protagonists instead.
Well, this might be why they're branching out a bit. Like, we've become a bit too
2 decades
too hyper focused on one style of gameplay. Let's take what we know from that and apply it to a completely different genre, which is a very interesting thing to do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think fantasy as well as a genre, as much as I do love fantasy, either it can be amazing, absolutely epic, or it can be very generic. We have our elves, and we have our dwarves, and our humans, and then the baddies are goblins and orcs.
Damn you, Tolkien. Setting up a world of rules.
But then the standard is Tolkien.
100%.
Yeah.
And
which is a pretty high bar, to be fair.
But you are right, and video games have obviously embraced this from Dungeons and Dragons all the way through to today's modern sensibilities that we have, and there's always space for new fantasy, but yeah, I completely agree with you. It needs that player base to kind of make it grow and do well, and they've not had that with Hitman before, but I think when we look at the wider world of online right now, it's being really scrutinized. We've said it with like Gotham Knights, we saw it with Avengers. Like, it feels like we've gone for the past few months, Richie, talking about live games as a service, online products winding down, shutting down, because the demand isn't there. If you don't crack that nut first time, it's a tough one.
The issue with games as a service is when it lands, it stays around, which means that portion of like, there's only so much of that market share is already taken up. So when you bring out something else, it has to be better than what happened before. Otherwise, people will just give it a go and go, nah, I'm better off. I prefer playing over here, where I was playing, where I've put like hundreds and hundreds of hours in already.
Yeah.
And then because it came like really popularized, there's a lot of games that got just chucked out there and then just didn't land or didn't land well enough. Mm-hmm. Look at Marvel's Avengers, as much as you loved it, that you can't really look at that as a success story.
It wasn't. It got shut down in less than 3 years. So
yeah, so it's just like when we look at things like Gotham Knights, it's like it just feels like it has to be better than what's already out there.
Yeah, it really does. And of course, as humans as well, we're creatures of habit. And once we get into something we like, pulling us away from that, so your Apex, your Destiny 2s, your World of Warcraft, like they've been running, like Destiny's on its 9th year now, is it, of a 10-year promised plan? And you need that audience to go with you, to stick with it. And all credit to them. I'm very intrigued to see what they do.
I want to see more. I hope they do something amazing with this.
Yeah,
but I do have my reservations.
Understandably. Obviously, it's no doubt going to be a few years out. We presume the Hitman team pivoted towards Project 007. That would be the next big thing. And then this is possibly a secondary team. It looks like they're evidently building with career opportunities and recruitment. Reading again, final notes from the website. This idea that a diverse group of individuals with different skills and strengths can work together and become more than the sum of their parts is what inspires us. Didn't someone knock at your door then?
Yeah.
Do you want okay. It inspires the fantasy world we're building and inspires how we build it. IO Interactive now spans multiple distinct studios from Copenhagen to Malmo in the north to the warm Barcelona in the south. The warm Barcelona in the south. All studios taking part in making all of our games, including this new endeavour. People from all over the world with diverse personalities and skill sets are coming together to forge a new beginning. This is just the start of our journey into this new world we're making. We hope you sense the warmth, the danger, the togetherness, and the heart we put into it. And if you do, we'd be honoured if you could join us. So it's like a recruitment trial thing, but also at the same time kind of laying the ground rules for what the game is going to be. And Richie, who didn't want to answer the door first time, but apparently if you knock twice, fool me once, fool me twice, he has to go and get it. IO Interactive then, making a game. My thoughts on it, I'm intrigued by it. I enjoy the Hitman games, but they've not really done enough for me to commit to playing them time and time again. And as much as I enjoyed the gameplay of Hitman, and I love it when we play it on stream, I've never really gone back on my own. I've done 1 or 2 missions, but then nothing ever brings me back in. And maybe that element of fantasy, because I'm a huge fantasy fan, will that kind of combination of the two might be enough for me to go, you know what? Yes, it works. But seemingly we are a long, long ways out. Who was at your door?
Package from my neighbour.
Damn it. Nothing. I bet you were like, I hate it when that happens. But, Richie, that's it for IO Interactive. I'm looking more forward to 007. I've been watching the Bond movies actually recently, going back. So GoldenEye, as you know, spurred my interest for going back, and I played a couple of the old games with my brother. Yeah. Me and the wife are actually also going through the Pierce Brosnan movies. So we watched GoldenEye last week. We watched Tomorrow Never Dies this weekend. We'll probably watch The World Is Not Enough at some point soon. And they're good movies. Tomorrow Never Dies, surprisingly, holds up really well with the creepy way of media creating problems and news and social influence in the wider world, and he essentially wants to start World War for broadcasting rights in China, which is like, as much as you joke, it was like there is no company outside of China that's cracked China yet. And that would be... it's just weird. It's weird, like,
it's one of them. I
dystopian
think
truths.
it works better now than it did when it came out.
Yeah, probably does. Don't get me wrong, the technology is still shoddy, but when he's driving around that BMW...
Also, it might be because I'm older and I understand the themes a bit more.
Oh, the themes are just more relevant than ever. But yeah, when he's driving around that BMW remote control and they're trying to attack it and it's got like gas and the tire popper things and they cut the cable and he's all just doing it on his Sony Ericsson phone. It's like, this is cool. I like it. But moving on to our next star of the week, we've got some Fortnite news to bring you, which we don't usually bring you on the channel because we're far too old to be messing around in Fortnite. I enjoyed playing Fortnite on the Save the World mode when it first came out, before it was even popular. And you get a build up and essentially stop waves of zombies or whatever they were, I think, many years ago. But of course, we all know what Fortnite has ballooned into since then. But rumour has it that there's a first-person mode making its way to Fortnite, and that's a rumour coming from data miner Hypex, who along with other leakers has confirmed that they believe Fortnite's first-person mode is set to arrive with the next Battle Royale season. Many Fortnite fans will know these guys because apparently they're famed in the community for providing correct leaks ahead of official announcements. And you know what, Richie? It doesn't surprise me. Fortnite is a game of it's an anything game now. It can have any characters from any world, any universe, any gameplay modes, whether it is just Battle Royale stolen from PUBG or their own take. It's an art style unto itself. It's popular to the millions of people. Does a first-person mode do anything for you to make you go back and test it out? Or is Fortnite just so beyond us now that we just can't?
I think Fortnite's just so beyond us. I have dabbled with Fortnite here and there, but again, I'm like, we're not really hardcore multiplayer gamers. Mm-hmm. So like, and then because I don't want to commit the time to get good at playing the game, this is my thing with online games, especially PvP. You have to get to a basic level of ability for the game to become fun, and that's quite a commitment of a number of hours, which I don't really want to commit to. If there was a bunch of us who were like friends who were just, you know what, once a week we're just going to get on comms, we're going to sit there, spend an evening playing like Fortnite or something, I could get into something like in that sort of scenario. But when I do most of my gaming like solo, and that's kind of how I like it.
Yeah, this is one of those things where if I had the choice as well, I'd rather go play Destiny. Like, we were speaking about games as a service, but like I had my time with Avengers. I did a lot of that solo. I did a lot of it with you. But then, if I'm going to commit like a weekly scheduled program to playing something, I probably would just go play Destiny. It's just got more pull and allure to me.
I'm notorious for saying I hate the art style as well. Which,
you are.
It's more
it hates
that
you.
I hate the fact that everyone's copying it.
That's what happens with friends, right?
I hate... Yeah, because Fortnite obviously went well with the kids with this like cartoony, cel-shaded art style. Mm-hmm. Every game seemed to just, for a while, be copy that. And it's like, but you're not going to get the kids in because they're all playing Fortnite.
That's true. And they are our future, everybody. Fortnite season, whatever they're up to, 8 something, comes to it. Chapter 4, Season 2 is coming to an end on Wednesday, the 8th of March. So if this no doubt is a leak, it's probably quite timely. Later on this week, you will see it no doubt launch with whatever the next trailer expansion pass is. Long live Fortnite.
Maybe one day we'll do a stream of it.
I mean, it's free, so there's no reason what to. Although I do suspect our audience, our viewers and listeners out there, maybe not too big of the Fortnite train themselves, which is why we don't usually spend that long talking about it on the show. It's had its moment in the sun for me. I actually remember when it came to Nintendo Switch, I played a game on the Switch in the hotel room thinking maybe it being portable will get me back into it. Everyone's new on the Switch, so everyone kind of, when the bar for experience got knocked down a peg because everybody was checking it out for the first time on the Switch. I got Battle Royale, I won, I screenshotted it, never touched it since. So I was like, I did it. I don't know how many were bots, I don't know how many were real people. I was sat in a hotel room somewhere with work, I did it, and I was like, I can die happy now, I guess. Speaking of dying happy or dying sad, next story of the week, Elden Ring has confirmed their expansion coming. We knew about this for some time. It's been rumoured, it's in the works. Surprisingly, it wasn't announced at the Game Awards. I really did think Jeff Keighley was going to use his amazing partnership with the kind of Elden Ring promotion to push the next level of this game, but maybe it needed a little bit more time in the oven. However, ironically enough, Richie, we had our PlayStation State of Play last week. Would have been a terrific time to kind of showcase a new game and an announcement. But no. From Software left it to basically a tweet post that went out, and they shared on Twitter, "Rise tarnished and let us walk a new path together. An upcoming expansion for Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erd Tree, is currently in development. We look forward to new adventures in the lands between." That's all we've got. And we've got a bit of concept art that essentially is a character in a field of reeds with some kind of ghost shadowy tombstones, a giant tree leaking some kind of golden ooze across a barren land. Looks very picturesque, very high fantasy. But Richie, you've not checked out Elden Ring yet. I haven't, because of the aforementioned struggle with Soulsborne-esque games. Maybe now I've checked out Warlong, Elden Ring is right up my street. Who knows? If I can kick Zhang Liang's ass finally, Elden Ring is like my next best thing.
I have Elden Ring, but the reason I haven't played it is because I want to do a first look on the channel of Elden Ring. And I'm going to do it live. And this is one of the games I've kind of put aside for knowing that when you have a child, there's going to be times when you can't make streams and stuff. So this was going to be one of the kind of it's quite high up in the list of games to go, right, Chris can't make it on Thursday, I'm playing Elden Ring.
Maybe that's what our channel becomes, you and me suffering. Because seemingly when our the Warlong stream went up, a lot of people in the chat, I feel like they were enjoying my pain and suffering. I'm not going to lie. They were giving me great support, great advice, even though it was pre-recorded, so it was all useless. I was watching loads of the comments saying, do this, try this. The advice is so helpful in those type of games because I don't know what I'm really doing, but there's some kind of
This is kind of why I plan to do it live, so I can get that live feedback, and I intend to go with it in a completely open mind as well, so just keep an eye out on the channel, so make sure you subscribe and whatnot to find out when that happens, because I haven't got a date on it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it could be this week.
It could be this week. I'm not on this week's live stream because, again, going in on the Friday, I'm going to have one final night of me and my wife without a child. It's quite an important thing that I thought we'd best spend the night together rather than me go and play video games online. So yes, priorities. Elden Ring's no surprise though, of course. Get loads of game. It's still winning Game of the Years. It won the DICE Awards over God of War last week. It's a credit unto itself. It's fantastic in its own rights and merits. No surprise it's getting DLC, right, Richie? It was inevitability.
Yeah. The one thing is, Armored Core will apparently come out before the DLC, so we're looking end of the year, if not even next year, for this.
Might be at this year's Game Awards.
Could be. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a big push at the end of the year for going into maybe January, February when the DLC drops.
And no doubt a Game of the Year edition that includes it.
Oh yeah, probably.
Seems like the perfect packaging opportunity. Or what they'll probably do, Richie, is they'll wait until Sony announce something to do with Horizon, and then they'll shit all over it by coming out and just making Horizon become not newsworthy whatsoever. It's interesting to think we get Burning Shores in a month's time, right? April or May is Burning Shores DLC, and yet Elden Ring is so far behind, it's supposedly. But either way, we won't combine the two. They're totally different games unto their own right. But yes, Elden Ring. Can you imagine the hype that is going to be the sequel to Elden Ring? When that day does finally come in 4 or 5 years' time.
It's going to be huge. And the thing is, this, depending on how big this DLC is, this could almost serve as a sequel to Elden Ring. Maybe there's a route that could go rather than just making an Elden Ring 2 that could just keep bringing in DLC.
Well, they do say in the tweet, they call it an expansion, not DLC, an expansion, which seemingly means there's going to be a new chunk of the world,
a new area,
maybe?
another bit of story. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's how big will this be? But if the commit is almost you know what, every year we're going to bring you a new expansion. The expansion is going to be maybe 10 to 15 hours long. Mm-hmm. They could keep this alive.
Absolutely. And it's just crazy that the success of Elden Ring, it's so curious how the knock-on effect, we've said it time and time again in this show, but does the success of Elden Ring negate a sequel to Sekiro? does it put a sequel to Bloodborne on the back burner for so long? Because Bloodborne's revered as one of the best PlayStation exclusives of the last generation on PS4, and From Software did that. Sekiro was wild. Sekiro won Game of the Year when that came out, and
do you think
it's so
maybe
crazy?
With Bloodborne, the fact that it is a PlayStation exclusive, probably maybe if Sony have some of the IP rights to that, maybe that's one of the reasons why they want to stay away from it.
Well, I think a lot of people think Sony should have snapped up From Software years ago when Bloodborne came out. And at the time, these Soulsborne games weren't as, they were critically acclaimed, but they didn't sell the numbers. And I think Elden Ring has broke that mold now, where it's no, they sell numbers.
The Dark Souls games, they kind of had this cultish following. Like the people who were properly into them and revered them as some of the greatest games of all time, where a lot of people was not for me. Bloodborne was made it, if being a PlayStation exclusive, I think helped put them on the map a bit more. Sekiro again. Every game I think they keep bringing out is pushed them a little bit higher, and Elden Ring is just absolutely smashed through to make them one of the most anticipated developers at the moment. It's okay, what are you guys working on? Everyone's paying attention now.
Yeah, it really has. But and now they've got Armored Core. If Armored Core comes out and has equal success, I don't think it will, because it's a bit of a different pivot from what they're used to doing.
I think they seem to be just focused on doing what they like.
We've got enough money now.
We love the team. The team there loves Armored Core, so we're going to make another Armored Core game. Mm-hmm. Hey, we had this passion project in Elden Ring, so we made that. Sekiro seemed like another passion project. It's just we're just going to keep. So sequels might just not come just because they have, we want to go work on this instead, rather than just it'd be cool to see someone like a Blue Point or something have a crack at a sequel to Bloodborne.
Well, they did, of course, the Dark Souls remaster for the PS5 launch, so they are familiar with the working mechanics of From Software games. They have said they're working on something new rather than a remaster, and we are dying to know what Blue Point and all the other exclusive studios are doing. But
if they were doing in collaboration, where the From Software guys are kind of providing, he's the kind of story that we want to tell.
Yeah, he's loosely what we want.
Yeah, all right, you guys, you know the mechanics. Mm-hmm. Do it. We'll a collab development.
Yeah, it's an interesting future. It's a good problem to have. They do kind of seem to be the kind of critical darling that CD Projekt Red were before they messed up with Cyberpunk, where they've just got this swell of goodwill.
Going to be their Cyberpunk?
No, I don't. I'm not too sure what the inner corporate workings are of FromSoft, but I don't think they're publicly traded like CD Projekt Red are, so there may not be as much clamber for appeasing investors and such.
I think Armored Core isn't one that's getting hyped to hell, where Cyberpunk was.
No, it's like the 6th Armored Core, right? So it's quite deep in the series. But shout out to From Software. All the best for the success of your new expansion when that finally does come out. And you love to see it. And maybe, Richie, this Elden Ring first look that you do, it may ignite a fire underneath you. I could kill this Zhangliang boss in Wolong, and that could ignite my fire. And then by the end of the year, we're both singing the praises of Elden Ring, and we're 100 hours into it. And that's all we stream here on the channel. Who knows? The future's crazy. One thing that won't be happening in the imminent future, because it's been delayed, though, is our next story of the week, and that is the Wolf Among Us 2 has been delayed back into 2024 to avoid burnout and crunch. This comes from the reformed Telltale Games studio. They posted out this week saying, yes, the critically acclaimed follow-up to 2013's narrative adventure based on Bill Willingham's fabled comic books has been delayed slightly. Not too long. It didn't have a concrete release date anywhere outside of the year, but it means it's been pushed back so the studio can focus on delivering the sequel fans deserve and doing what's right for the game while protecting the health of our team. This is from Telltale Games CEO Jamie Ottilli, I want to say, who helped resurrect and recreate the studio from 2019 onwards. He expanded on that statement saying, The Wolf Among Us 2 development, it had some difficulties during staffing because of the pandemic, and the development team's desire to switch to Unreal Engine 5, which, let's face it, Telltale's engine was ripped apart for its previous entries for being aged and just slow. So the fact that the team pushed to move it to Unreal 5 suggests that it's the right move, which, according to the CEO, said it's going to require a lot of redoing, quite a bit of work, because they'd already started the project on Unreal 4. So makes sense. Again, you and me are both. If it's to help prevent crunch and work stress and well-being and stuff, then it's always going to be the right thing to do. And yeah, I'm excited for it. If anyone's not played the Wolf Among Us games, it's basically taking all the fairy tale fable stuff that you love and know from your childhood, Hansel and Gretel, all that kind of jazz, werewolves and such, and making it into almost like a crime detective drama. You play as Bigsby Wolf, and there's been a murder. I can't remember. Is it Cinderella or someone gets murdered in the first game, and you have to basically
10 years ago.
You have to basically go and solve the murder by seeing characters. But the trailer came out, I think it was at Summer Games Fest last year, and it's the one IP that Telltale seemingly had more investment in. We know they did Batman, we know they did Borderlands, but they never owned any of those IP. They did Jurassic Park, they did Back to the Future, and they didn't make any money from that because the IP took the big chunk of the cost. The Wolf Among Us was one that they had a bit more control over. It's still not their IP, but because it was just from a lesser-known comic book series, they had, I think, a bit more money value to take out of it. And I thoroughly enjoyed The Wolf Among Us too, and it has been so long. So interesting to see this one. Any thoughts?
Indeed. I'd like them to bring out a remaster of the first one.
Yes.
Because we are talking, it's like 9 years at this point since The Wolf Among Us came.
Yep.
So just a remaster on modern consoles, just to refresh us on the story.
Yeah, I think that would be a good move.
And maybe in the latter half of this year, it doesn't need to be a big thing, just like, right, there you go. Stick it on PlayStation Plus or Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
Go, right, there you go. You can play the first one for free in anticipation. And again, when it comes to like delays, if you delay a game, if you need to delay a game for the sake of the game and for the sake of your staff, absolutely 100% do it.
Yeah, and that,
like, we can wait.
And that goes back to, I guess, what we've suspected since Telltale was reformed. They've not really done anything with the legacy IP. Like, we've not seen any Walking Dead bundles. When we were obviously shouting from the rooftops about Google Stadia, we said, like, get all of these Telltale games into the cloud with touchscreen input, because the games lend themselves so well to not necessarily requiring the best latency, not necessarily requiring controllers to play those games, and they tell some wonderful stories. Like the Batman one's fantastic. I enjoyed the Game of Thrones one for what it was. It was a bit behind the TV show at the time, but I enjoyed it. And the Jurassic Park one, the Back to the Future one, of course, Tales from the Borderlands, which we got a sequel to, not made by Telltale, which I think we joked about on last week's show, the show before, about how that just came and went without any acknowledgement or marketing campaign at all. So yeah, I would like to see the Telltale games from yesteryear come back and just have like a rekindled life. And I think bringing out a remastered Wolf Among Us 1 would be the perfect stepping stone to people playing the long-awaited sequel.
Yeah, they haven't, since the reform, they haven't really got anything over the line yet. No. So there's going to be... It's going to be interesting.
You need to make some moves at some point. But speaking of long-awaited sequels, final story of the week brings us back to Ubisoft. It's been a while since we spoke about good old Ubisoft. And this comes from the Beyond Good and Evil 2 team, as the studio director has reportedly left. Ubisoft Montpellier have been working on this for quite some time, and it's apparently facing even more development trouble now, as a new report states that they're undergoing major leadership shake-up. According to a report from Kotaku, staff informed last week that the managing director is no longer with the company. He's been absent from the role since the beginning of 2023, and no reason for his departure was given. He's been at Ubisoft for nearly 2 decades, so this is a long-standing member of the team. He's gone, and the Montpellier development team is undergoing a well-being assessments through a third-party company for preventative measures and to evaluate where additional support needs. This goes back to the wider story that this week Ubisoft are also apparently working on a strategic reorganisation of its European business as well, a process that is, at this stage, they have no details to share, but it does just look like consolidation is happening all over the place. We've reported in the past few weeks about layoffs at Microsoft, layoffs at Google, layoffs at all these big tech companies. No surprise then, Ubisoft again seemingly struggling at the moment with game output and controversy, stuff going on in-house. Beyond Good and Evil 2, Richie, is this thing ever going to see the light of day? And do you give a shit? Because at this point, I've never played the first game. I don't hear any further for the game. When the trailer came out at E3 a few years ago, it got a bit of a hype pop, but I don't think anyone really cares. It's similar to what I was saying about Gotham Knights. It's similar to what I've been saying about Skull and Bones. Just, it's been so long in the oven. I don't think there is any really... Honestly, I don't think anyone actually gives a shit about these games. Like, sorry to any fans of the franchise out there, but it's the sequel to a game that was over 10-year-old.
can you call it a franchise yet? It's only got one game in it, which was released in 2003. So it's 20 years since the first game came out. It's like 6 years since this was announced. And we haven't even seen any real gameplay footage.
I think we have. I think that's the problem. We haven't. And then
this is it. It's like the way I look at it is, if I was to take over Ubisoft today, I would go to the team making this and go, by the end of the week, give me something playable about this game. And if it isn't amazing, I think I just pull the plug on this, because it just feels like something that's just stuck. They've probably put so much time and investment into it already. It almost feels like they've determined to get it over the line. But I don't expect this to be a good game at all. I think this is just eventually going to come out to be put out to die. And maybe I'm being a bit harsh, because maybe it's like a lot of the internal politics at like Ubisoft, and how I've always complained. I think their games feel like they just have a production line, but 6 years in, and 20 years since the first game, and it just feels like, wasn't it last year we reported that they were just starting to get key roles filled for the team and stuff?
It's the same kind of thing we've heard from Skull and Bones, where there's like, changes, we've adapted stuff, we've took on feedback from beta testing, and we're rehashing it, and it just seems like you said, it's been so long in the oven. I think the world's moved on.
Not amazing. It's like
we just said about Forspoken at the beginning of the show, of how that's just not done that well, and that's a brand new IP of a similar kind of fantasy ilk. And I don't know. I'm looking at gameplay of the original game now, and I just can't see anything. I'm sure we're going to see something, because remember, they did say they will be at E3 this year if E3 goes ahead. I remember Yves Guillemot coming out and saying, like, if it's happening, we'll be there. We'll be there. Ringing endorsement there. But
announcing
Ubisoft,
more Assassin's Creed games.
Oh, a lot more. But Ubisoft problems aside, of course, folks, this has been episode 38 of Talking the PS, your weekly show where we round up all of the PlayStation news for your listening or viewing pleasure right here on youtube.com/Helix Plays Games. Don't forget to click like, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and ring that bell so you are kept in the loop with when our live shows go live, when Richie takes to Elden Ring solo style with you, the wonderful audience. Of course, go check out my first look at Wolong Fallen Dynasty, and join us later on today for our penultimate episode of the ClickerCast, where we round up The Last of Us TV show adaptation, break down all the characters, the plot, the story points, and all of the crazy action that's happening in these final 2 episodes. We meet David this week, Richie. Shit is about to hit the fan. But that's been it for this week's show. Thank you very much for watching, of course. Keep supporting the boys down below. Become a Helix Hero if you wish to. From as little as 99p, you get early access to this show and a bunch of other perks, stickers, badges next to your name, and Richie's undying love. My name's been Chris.
I've been Richie.
We've been Helix Plays Games. And remember, folks, play whatever makes you the happiest. I'm going to go and have a baby. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Richie is not having a baby, just to be sure.
No.
That he knows of.